toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance. Welcome everyone. This is the fourth in our series of 6 classes on the Imaginal faculty of the soul. So let's think a bit about our soul's journey. As we've shared previously in the past, Hazrat Khan said that our soul began as if it was a ray of light from a divine central sun, descending through all the spheres of existence, all the way down to physical manifestation, to our human form. And then in our development, we had to develop the capacity of having a separate identity in order to, an ego, in order to be able to even begin to establish a relationship with the divine or the transcendent. And in the course of our spiritual journey, we're wanting to further that relationship. So we've talked about developing the subtle faculties of perception, or organs of perception of the soul. We've talked about modulating our consciousness to be able to experience the different levels on which we exist. We've talked about aiming towards being able to experience ourselves as multidimensional beings. And we've been talking in this series about the imaginal faculty, which the Sufis have called the true imagination, or the creative imagination, as the means by which we can further this relationship and this discovery of the true nature, not only of our being, but of the reality in which we exist. And we may tend to think of imagination as just kind of a catch-all faculty. Like, we can close our eyes, I can close my eyes and imagine an apple in my hand. Well, that's pretty easy to do. I can imagine what I might be doing tomorrow or 10 years from now. I can imagine each of you sitting at your computer screen watching us present this class. But that's imagination just operating in the ordinary realm of physical reality. And true, it's enabling us to bridge distance, and we can bridge time. We can think about, imagine something in the future and something in the past. But we have many other capacities of imagination. And like any tool, it's something that needs to be developed. And what we're going to be exploring in this class tonight is some of the different aspects of the imaginal faculty. And one of those aspects is how we can navigate through different realms, different types of experience, different states of consciousness, and so on. And even in terms of directions of navigation, even in terms of, rather than thinking of it as kind of an autopilot facility, like if you hit Google search and you click enter, you just get the result. So instead of just thinking, well, I'm going to imagine something and I'll just see whatever comes to mind, we're going to discover how, as we've been discussing throughout all the classes in previous series too, it's all about a relational way of experiencing. So imagination is a relational faculty in the way that we can work with it. It can be true, just a separated type of thing like I described a little while ago. And as I've described in previous classes, Sufis say the purpose of spirituality is not one in which our identity is dissolved into the divine. So imagination is not just something in which we just disappear and something comes in. So we're going to be talking about how we can direct imagination in different directions, the different pulls and pushes and intentions.
So in so many traditions, the imagination is seen as important, and thinking about it in the terms that even science challenges us, that we live in multiple dimensions. We live in a very different way than most of the time we perceive. And in order uh, to bridge the gap and to jump into a new way of perceiving that connects all that we have heard is really connected in physics, and that affects everything, like Azarbash was saying, um, that in our transformation we transform much more than only ourselves. Um, that it's like kind of like pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. We're performing something that's really impossible to do by recovering the multidimensionality of who we are from this little sliver of consciousness that most of the time we are doing. So this is not about making something pretty to show somebody. This is really about a total transformation, not only of our own perception it's also about our own contribution and what we can actually do and how we can act and how much influence can we have. And in a little bit, we'll be going back to the Zoroastrian way of seeing things to help us with putting together an affirmation that will help us to daily think of how can we enable this imagination in the very best way.
So we've also been talking many, many times about the importance of our uniqueness. So, and the mystics talk about different kinds of knowledge. There's acquired knowledge, which is knowledge that's gained from studying with someone, reading books, and so on. And then there's what's called revealed knowledge or revealed wisdom. And this is something that arises from within, that does not come and is not based on previous experience or an external source. So when we work with imagination, back to navigating, we could think of, well, I'm wanting to come up with a song or a poem or a work of art, and you have it all in mind what you want, and you're just wanting your imagination to kind of show you a little bit more about how you can do that. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's kind of a limited aspect of imagination, because the basis of what is going to be able to come is going to be limited to what your conceptions are about how you think things are supposed to be. And so there'll be a built-in filter to reject anything that's not in keeping with your expectations, and you might miss out on something. So this is a potential problem in many different areas of human endeavor. It can be a problem in science, where many scientists have a almost fundamentalist basis of assumption about the way reality is based on what's been discovered so far and what's been described as the laws, such as the laws of physics, implying they're immutable, couldn't possibly be changed, and there couldn't be anything different from that. So anything that they encounter that doesn't fit with that is rejected as either it didn't really happen, or that's just somebody's fantasy or whatever. So what I'm saying is that imagination can have barriers put on it by our preconceived expectations. And also, talking about revealed wisdom, if we think that there's just kind of a general wisdom that's sitting out there for anybody to be able to tap into, it's going to be the same for everybody, then we're missing out on the whole point of the uniqueness of our being. And back to what Ibn Arabi said, that every soul has access to a unique part of the divine wisdom that no other soul ever could or will be able to have access to. So this is a really vital point. There's something that can only come through us, and there's a way of our engaging with the faculty of imagination to facilitate our discovery of something that is revealed. And let me clarify this a bit. it's not revealed by something that's sitting in a lockbox somewhere that has our name on it that only we can get to. It's not a pre-established wisdom. It's a wisdom that emerges through the relationship between our manifest side and our divine or transcendent side. And both sides, and we'll get to this in a meditation towards the end of tonight, both sides are simultaneously discovering something that hadn't been able to be known except through what came through our participation in this creative process through the faculty of imagination.
Well, this gives me an idea of a way to perceive things that we need to be willing to be revealed. The deeper parts of ourself that we might keep quiet and unknown, that allowing that discovery of the divine, you might say, of your own being, that infuses the process. And we need to be willing to open those places. And that's really all I wanted to say for now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we've talked many times about the Sufi terms of fana, shattering. The traditional translation is annihilation, but it's a breaking down of previous ways of being and knowing and understanding. And then baka, what arises, what emerges, the resurrection. And in chaos theory, this would be the in-between state when something's going from one state of relative equilibrium to a higher state of equilibrium. And before that happens, there's an in-between state in which things seem unformed and it's impossible to predict what's going to emerge. So this isn't one of the necessary ingredients in this process of working with our imaginal faculty of welcoming and enabling fana to happen. And what does that mean? It means if we're wanting to open to a discovery, whether it's a deeper understanding of something, when we're wanting to open to a creative means of expression, then we have to be able to get into a receptive state, but we also have to be able to let go of our thought forms about, as I was mentioning earlier, our conceptions of what we think that's going to be like. And even our language, well, this is like such and such, or this reminds me of so and so. We want to put things back into familiar terms, but if we're going to really have some breakthroughs using our imagination, we have to be open to an experience that is unfamiliar. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's a rightness about it. We know it's got a ring of authenticity and truth to it. Okay, so now we kind of weave some other things together that have been themes in earlier classes. The initial tendency when we enter into a state like that is to bliss out, and it's very wonderful, and then we come back out of it and we remember that we've been in some high experience and we'd like to get back to that, but we don't have much to take home from it. It hasn't been able to be integrated into our experience to open ourselves up into a broader capacity of being. So we've talked before about, well, what are some ways that we can ground those experiences? And we've talked about metaphors, we've talked about landscapes and images. And so there has to be a way of, let me use electricity, power sources as an example. There are what are called step-down transformers. So if you have something that runs on 9 volts, you can't plug it into 120 volt household current, it'll fry it. But your little charging devices for your phone, let's say, or your iPad have a built-in transformer that steps that current down to the form that can be utilized. So we have to have something that steps down the experience that is beyond something that can be put into words into a digestible form. And we all have our different ways of going about that. And like I said, it could be through imagery, it could be through an emotion, it could be through a feeling of energy, it could be through an image that comes to mind. There's many, many different ways, but this enables us to build what we've described before as a scaffolding between our usual state of being and the state that we experience, which we previously thought of as something separate from who we are, but gradually we're discovering this is just another aspect of who we are. And now we're enabling our consciousness to incorporate both of these states of being into the unity of who we are. And our imagination is the faculty that helps us be able to do that.
Well, maybe see if this is what you're talking about. Sometimes we have some imagery of like talking, let's say being out in nature and feel like the birds are speaking to us, the sky, the colors are changing in response really to our own moods sometimes. Even the wind, we feel the wind caressing our cheeks, and we feel that the divine one is right here with us. So here's a kind of imagery that might be transitional.
Yeah, no, that's good. As Hazrat Khan has so beautifully said, there's only one sacred scripture, and the leaves of the trees are the pages, and the wind is the page, and the song of the birds, and all these other things. We've talked about everything is potentially a portal to the sacred, or more recently, we've described it as a hotspot that opens up a connection with the sacred. And I'm thinking about in the gospel, where the disciples were able to understand all the languages of the world. Well, it isn't like they had a Google Translate chip that suddenly got activated in their brain. It was the language of the soul was able to be understood. And what Rabbani Raz is describing, and there's so many things that are getting woven together here. I hope some of this will really trigger some things in you. Relational unity, our way of being in a state of relationship with what we are experiencing that enables a two-way circulation of light. And the light of each thing is having an effect on the light of the other thing. Well, that is the modality by which this understanding that you're referring to can take place. And when we're open to it, these are the times when we feel like everything just seems magical, like things are speaking to us. Well, everything is speaking to us. This is an awakened state of the soul. We've talked about everything being Gabriel and seeking to announce itself, and we're seeking to announce ourself to everything, the unique divinity of ourself. And so that imaginal faculty, when we're in that state of being, in that state of relationship, where the two sides are not separated and they're not one dissolved into the other, then there is a communication potentially with anything that we're having an experience with. And we can set an intention. Like I have this plant that I think I showed in a previous class, this Hawaiian plant that is just so beautiful and just prospering so much. And I really feel that plant appreciating how much I appreciate it. I mean, it just kind of lights up, and it's a reality. It's not just something, we hear the term imagination, oh, that's just a pipe dream, that's just a nice thought you have. It is a reality, that experience. And we've all had that experience many times with different types of things. You turn on the radio and here's this song that's just really speaking to you, or it could be any number of things.
Well, I think you could do a little more and then I'll do the meditation.
Okay. Well, and another way we can work with imagination is what I think of as fine tuning. So again, we have a tendency in spirituality to think about different things in a generic sense. Consciousness. I'm going to raise consciousness. I'm going to put my consciousness here or there, like it's this thing that you're moving around, but it's not so specific. So we can think about modulating or fine-tuning our imaginal faculty with, let's say, a particular divine quality. So just like if we had a pair of colored glasses, rose-tinted glasses, everything's going to look rose color. We're seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. If we put the fine-tuning or focus, or you could think of as filter, only this filter is not blocking anything out, it's just enabling everything to be experienced through, let's say, the divine beauty. So that's what our intention is. And now we're open to experiencing how the divine is expressed through beauty, through whatever it is we're experiencing. So we can say what we're experiencing is announcing itself, it's Gabriel, but now the way it's delivering the message of its being itself is through the quality of beauty. And the way we're responding is through the reflection of that beauty. And it could be through compassion, it could be through mastery, it could be through any number of things, but it's not something that's narrowing anything down. It's just opening everything up to be experienced through a particular way of relationship to the divine through the different qualities. And that's how I think of the divine qualities. Every quality is a modality of relationship between manifestation and the divine. And I used to think of it, well, they were just all kind of these archetypal qualities sitting there. I don't think they come to life or even into existence without that relationship taking place. But these are just all the different ways in which this relationship can take place through the qualities. So when we work with spiritual practices, with the divine names, if we can do it in that way that we're engaging in that modality of relationship, it's so much richer than just saying, like the divine name for beauty is Jamil, Ya Jamil, Ya Jamil, Ya Jamil. We're really experiencing every time we say that the unfoldment of beauty into us, through us, from us, and even beauty itself being enriched by the way that we're experiencing it. Then it makes everything so much more alive and participatory, rather than thinking of something that we're applying to ourselves.
That kind of reminds me of how I have been challenging myself to sense every moment as new, as this is a possible branching off place. This is a possible returning light to the divine. This is a very exciting moment now. And if we can do our practices each time we say a practice with that consciousness, that this is breaking through, like we said in an earlier class, slicing through that moment in time and in that instant of time in a way that something emerges that wasn't there before. It's a wonderful use of the imagination to be bringing us to that state where everything is possible. So in order to help us with daily challenge of bringing the imagination to play, I'm going to go back to the moment in the Zoroastrian tradition where the participant, the Zoroastrian, was looking at toward the divine Earth Mother named Spenta our Mighty, and saying, yes, I am your daughter, I am your son, saying, my goal is to open the house of Spenta our Mighty within myself. This was another way of saying that I will recover and realize the multidimensional character of reality of the world. And the next part was, I will honor the thought of wisdom. And I'll always remember this thought of wisdom. We'll talk more about that with the thought of wisdom. It's the imagination itself. And then the last part of it is that I will enable the new creation, the transfiguration of the world. Okay, so these are 4 different ways, and we have found wazifa, or a divine name that goes with each one of them, that will help us to bring these powers really into operation. And really, if we can get one of these, it'll pull the other 3. So it might be the one that works best with one person, maybe someone else has another that works the best for them. But they'll all work together in that moment of facing the divine, and what is pulled from us, and what kind of gets the engine revving towards having this imaginal faculty in operation. All right, so I'd like you to, if you have something to write down on, here's the different 4 sections. First, as we would say it in English, the first part is, O human divine one. So if you write this down, it's really referring to your own being. It's almost like it's the divine saying this to you, human divine being. And the second one is open the house. As we were taught to open the house of Sventa Almighty, or in other words, find that multidimensionality. But you just write open the house. Next is shine your being light. And being light is hyphenated. And that really means is Varna. So those of you who are participating in the last classes, that was Varna, X-V-A-R-N-A-H, Varna. That everything is made from this being light. And here's another thing of something that we challenge ourselves to live into that. Feel that that is somehow that we are beings of light. If we can use our imaginations toward that goal. And that really is the section on developing the imagination. And the last is enable the new creation. So this is the affirmation, and I would say is the Sophianic affirmation, or you could say Sventa Almighty affirmation. That is our task as human beings, human divine beings, to recover that imagination. Again, it's human divine one, open the house, shine your being light, enable the new creation. So now we're going to say them as, we're going to find the divine names that go with these sections. And this is something that Azarbash helped me with earlier. The first one is Ya Mawjud. It's spelled M-A-W-J-U-D. Mawjud, M-A-W-J-U-D. This means making God a reality. So it goes very well with the idea of being the human divine one. It is that one who is manifest, but not as a manifest being separated off from the divine, actually in the family of the divine, just as we were challenged to be the sons and daughters of Sventa Almighty. So Ya Mawjud. Why don't you say it with me? Ya Mawjud. Again, that means manifest, God as a manifest being, making God a reality. The second one, open the house. This is the one where we're challenging ourselves to realize multidimensionality. The way that we say that in the Sufi tradition is Ya Fatah, F-A-T-T-A-H, Ya Fatah, and it really means open the door. So we're thinking about opening the whole house, unfolding the dimensionality that is really there, that we can perceive better if we unfold it. But we're thinking of it as opening the door, as a beginning to that process. I want to say here, right in the middle of the practice too, this is for this class, to say in this class. However, if you would like to talk to your guide, perhaps it's a practice that you could keep for a while or for quite a long time. So check with your guide. And if you don't have a Sufi guide, then let's just let this be a part of this class as far as the words themselves. But you can, of course, think about the different sections of it and challenge yourself to realize these different ways of thinking. The next part was to enable, to shine your being light. Well, a good one for that is Ya Zahir, Zahir. Zahir means a star, and it means shining forth. So is that challenge to realize yourself as a being of light rather than flesh only, and to use this brings into play to not just see things in a different way, but to do things, to participate in, as they said in Zoroastrianism, the transfiguration of the world, no less than the whole world being transformed. And then the last part of this affirmation is enabled a new creation. And we've chosen Ya Khaliq, Khaliq, Khaliq. And it's often pronounced Khaliq, but however you want to say it, I'm going to say it Khaliq, because that's the way I learned. And this is the idea of the creation itself, that you can participate in the creation itself. Why? Because you are in the same family as the divine. You are, one word for it is filiation. You are affiliated. You are the son or daughter of this divine one. So I'd like to ask you to say these with me. I'm going to begin and say it. I'll say it 3 times, and then I'll invite you to join me. And then we'll go ahead and say them for a while, and then I'll tell you when we can stop. Try to, if you have the meanings there with you, take a look at those meanings. Feel that there is something changing within you as you say these. And really, they have a power also because of all the beings who have said these before, because of the way that the sounds are put together, because of us working together. So this is a very good opportunity for you to see, does this help to turn the key for you to say these divine names, and especially to put them together into this whole idea of developing this imagination. So here we go. So I'll say it first. This is making God a reality. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. Every time you say it, it's a new moment. Ya Mawjood. Please join me. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. Ya Mawjood. One more. Ya Mawjood. Now we're going to say Ya Fatah, opening the house or thinking of multidimensionality and knowing that it's true and maybe experiencing it right now. I'll say it first. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah. Please join me. Ya Fatah.
Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah. Ya Fatah.
One more.
Ya Fatah.
Next is Ya Zahir, which is the star shining forth. It's recovering your light being. Ya Zahir. Ya Zahir. Ya Zahir. Join me. Ya Zahir.
Ya Zahir. Ya Zahir.
Ya Zahir. Ya Zahir. Ya Zahir. One more. Ya Zahir. And finally, to enable the new creation, the whole idea is about transfiguration of the world. I'll say it first. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. You join me. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. Ya Khalik. One more. Ya Khalik. Now let's just close our eyes and feel the effects of all of these beautiful divine names. Feel you are in the family of the divine, that you're willing to open to your multidimensionality, your connection to everything. Feel your light being, and feel that ability to enable a new creation. Let this be a seed that is within you, that can be watered and grown by all the times that you bring your consciousness to the meaning of these divine names. Amen.
So I'd like to return to something we've talked about in the previous class, the idea of a hologram and how a hologram works. So with a hologram, you have an object and you have a reference frequency, and then you have a light that's shined on the object, and then the interaction, the interference with that light and the object combined with the reference frequency generates a hologram. And then when you put the reference frequency back onto the hologram, you see the original object. So if you've ever been to Disney World and you're, I don't remember the name of the ride, but you see this ghost in your car right in front of you that looks so real. It's, I mean, you can turn your head and see the different sides. It makes a three-dimensional object out of something that was just a two-dimensional display. And how did that happen? It happened by a light being put back onto it that enabled that to be revealed. So when we experience things, and when we engage with our imaginal faculty, and when we participate with the light of our being in connection with the light of what we're experiencing, it's a similar kind of idea. Something is opened up beyond the surface appearance of both sides, and it's a deeper reality that is revealed that can only come through the interaction of that light. But what differs from a regular hologram, what emerges, because the light of each of our beings is unique, as is the light from everything we're experiencing, what emerges from that is not something that was pre-existent. So it's not recreating something that was already there, but it's actually creating something that can only arise through a relationship. And so when we have a transformative experience, what happens during that experience, both with our eyes closed, but a lot of times for a good while afterwards, when we're walking around, the world seems so different. Colors seem more vibrant, sounds seem much more clear, everything seems much more alive. And something has happened that we are now able to experience in that relationship of light upon light, that unfolds a reality that is born anew at every instant, that is so different from the flattened out world that we usually exist in, that we don't think of as flattened out because we're so used to it. We think, well, this is just the way that things are, and it can be pretty amazing, but it can be so much more amazing when we can use this faculty of the imagination to help us make that shift. We've talked many times about the importance on the spiritual journey of there being a radical shift in our frame of reference, our vantage point, our consciousness, and even I would add our modality of relationship with whatever it is that we are experiencing. So I mentioned earlier there's different kinds of pulls that we can think are associated with imagination, pushes and pulls. So what would a push be? A push would be we're sitting with a desire for a breakthrough in something that we're working on. And so we have an intention. We may have just kind of a really cloudy idea of a direction that we're going in, but we don't know what it's going to be, but we're launching forth that intention. And then we have to get into that receptive state of openness so we can come into that relationship. So that'd be one way, one direction, so to speak, of engaging with the imagination. But another might be if you've ever had the experience when you feel like the divine is knocking at your door, could be in the middle of the night or during a meditation or just out of the blue during the day. And I call it a download from the divine. It's just like this condensed wisdom experience that you weren't trying to cook up. You had no idea that it was coming, but there it is. And I've talked about my own experience. Oftentimes when I get one of those, it's got so much richness packed in it that I know that it's going to take me at least a year to really fully open it all up. It's like a seed of wisdom that I have to go through a phase of growth to be able to open to the point that I can really work with it. So that would be another direction of imagination. It's like coming this revealed wisdom that I've talked about. But there's a third direction. And the third direction is the putting together of the two sides and enabling something to take place that can only come through this relationship of the two sides. And it's our active and conscious participation in the new creation, participating in what we call the human divine co-creative process that takes both sides to be able to enact. Something is born through that meeting of light that is a revelation, not just for us on our human side, which is usually the way that we think about, oh, I've had a revelation of some deep wisdom, and it feels like that. That's terrific. But in actuality, it's also a revelation on the divine side for something that the divine is discovering at the same time you're discovering that could only happen through the relationship. So there's the kind of upward direction of imagination where you're launching forth a desire or an intention. There's the descending direction where it feels like something is just coming down. But then there's the outward, you could say, or cosmic direction of imagination where it's the fruit of what comes from these two sides together.
Well, I think this is a good time for me to answer your challenge to me. When we were planning this class, he said, well, you do a lot of art, and why don't you explain what it feels like to be producing the art? But as we said before, the point is not the production of the art as much as it is what it's doing to the individual. what kind of change of consciousness is there? And then, as you were saying already beautifully, how can this change everything? So something that happens very often in my consciousness when I'm working on art, or when I'm playing with art, is a softening of the ego, a softening of the way I see myself, such that I like to say, I leave room for the divine action. So I'm not just producing from one side a product. It is, I am waiting for the response from the other side. I guess it's a combination of some of the things you were talking about already. Coming from one side, from the divine side, and then coming from the what I would like. And I'll find something that might have been, oh yeah, and I have some things to show actually. So often I will start with a little piece of maybe a thread or a little piece of cloth that I dropped, and I pick it up and I begin with that, feeling that that was given to me. This is coming from the divine, and then there'll be something that I work with to maybe put it on the paper or think about a color, and then there'll be a response from the other side. And I know I'm speaking to many creative beings here, that artists and poets and musicians and composers even, but hopefully I'm just trying to give words to the experience that we all have had, and of course in our unique ways. However, if I show something here, I guess some of you can see this pretty well. The response, let's see here, these green on the yellow here were an impression of leaves that I've seen, that my process then led me to cut foam sheets that I have in these shapes. It's one big piece that's cut with little bitty scissors so that I can stamp with that. And again, I'll do something and then I'll set it aside, and then there'll be something else that comes, and then I'll add that. And if you work, I've decided that if I work in a small way, you see this here is actually a piece of paper, it's cardstock, but I'm using these to inspire my writing, because I'm feeling this wonderful relationship that I had with the divine in creating this, whatever that it seems to look like, that's beside the point. But the feeling of all of it was key in that back and forth process. And there could be many manifestations of them. But the idea being, I don't know what's going to happen at the beginning, but then I get some ideas as it goes along. And then I feel that nature responds. This is actually a mesquite bean dried up here with little spots of paint on that. And then one thing leading to another, but bringing me closer and closer into a deep relationship. I also have an image about this that helps me to recognize when I'm having this shared experience, back and forth kind of thing. If you remember old-fashioned Venetian blinds, and I guess we have blinds. I see Phyllis has some blinds in back of her right now. That slats, we have what we see beyond the slats, and we see the slats themselves. If you could imagine the slats being like a mirror and showing, if I'm looking at them, showing me my own space and my own being, but then the slats themselves show what's beyond that. It's kind of like the image of the interference pattern that Azurbash showed us a couple weeks ago, and the whole idea of this intermingling of our beings in that way. But you might have an image that you use to help you understand how that is that you have this kind of relationship. And and so then even in that the process itself of the creation, we're teaching ourselves something about what it is to be like, to be in a reflective kind of relationship where one side affects the other so deeply.
So this might be a good time for a meditation.
Right.
So go ahead and close your eyes. And one thing that can be helpful in working with imagination is to allow yourself to be on that edge of anticipation of discovery. And you don't know what it is that you're going to discover, but there's just kind of a little inner excitement that something is stirring. So you're relaxing your usual way of thinking about things and trying to plan things. And then you can set forth, excuse me, an intention, and the intention could be divine wisdom potluck. Like, I would just like to be open to something that will be helpful to me, as Pure Light would say, the next step in my journey. And no more than that for setting the stage, just an opening to a discovery of something. We talk about the spirit of guidance, but sometimes we might think of that as just this generic spirit of guidance, but there's the unique spirit of guidance in each of us, and that comes when we get into that state of alignment in what we call the barzakh, the interface, the meeting place between the human and divine aspects of ourself, the wisdom that's revealed in that relationship. So maybe you start to feel kind of a nibble in a certain inner direction, and you allow yourself to navigate to that. And it's not navigating like you're driving a car in a direction, it's more navigating that you're just orienting and opening to that. The Sufi say attuning to that. So allow yourself to orient to that emergent light wisdom. Recalling that your being was created from the desire of the divine being to know him herself in a way that could only take place through you. So the divine is awaiting this discovery just as much as you are. So now you can feel a mutual pull of each side being drawn to the other, each side open to the other, each side receiving light from the other, and each side being transformed by the light that comes from the other and it's returned. And see if you can feel something opening up in your being. And it's not opening in a particular place in your being. The world of your being is opening. The world of your being is revealing itself to you as you are revealing yourself to that world. The divine expression, the divine manifestation. And now there's a kind of feedback, and we don't have good words for this because feedback you probably think of as back and forth, but this is everything touching everything else, infusing everything else, and transforming everything else simultaneously. Some of you may be familiar with something that's called heart math, and there's a little device you can get, you hook up to your finger, and there's little games you can play that it's kind of a biofeedback that respond to when your heart is in this really harmonious state. And one of my favorites of it is that you start out in this just black and white realm, and as you start to get it, colors start appearing, and things start appearing, animals and plants and flowers, and the whole world blossoms. So see if you can feel the world that your soul inhabits blossoming like this. Not through any possible effort on your part. It could not take place through any personal will, but just an opening and an allowance to the reality of who you are, the true nature of your being, and the true nature of the world in which you have always and will always exist. And allow yourself to ground this state of being, this experience in the depths of your being, all the way down into the cells of your body, even into the molecules and atoms, and even the subatomic particles that comprise your physical aspect are all scintillating with this ever-emergent light of revelation and transformation. Realizing that you can keep this state of beingness even as you go about your daily routine, even as you bring your awareness back to your body, sitting comfortably wherever it is that you are listening to this class, and gently opening your eyes and being deeply grounded in the world that you're in, but allowing that world to remain open, transformed. And so we have a little suggested homework assignment for you, and that is to just find some, I'll put in quotes, ordinary little things in your surroundings that you would not usually have given a second thought to. It could be little things you find on the ground outside, leaves, or little things you find around your house. It could be even inanimate objects, but just some little things, and collect them together where you can sit with them and see if you can be open to these are a hot spot for you. This collection of things that you have in front of you is telling a story to you. It's the allegory of the soul of what you're experiencing. And you're coming into a state of relational unity with what you're experiencing. But now you are finding a way to give expression to what you're experiencing which could be through any number of modalities. And as Ravani Ross said, the point is not the thing that you create. It may be something wonderful, it may be something that seems fairly ordinary. The whole point is the process, but the way you go about expressing what's being communicated and what's being stirred in you could be through some form of art. It could be through a song with words that comes to mind, or just something you just hum. It could be through movements you feel inspired to do. It could be any number of ways, but see if you can find a way to bring to life your way of expressing what you're experiencing. And this will be another kind of exercise for your imagination to be able to ground an experience in a deeper level of reality, but also to be able to participate in the expression of what you've experienced.
Mm-hmm. Nice.